Hello, weird people, and welcome back to another episode of Mac Music Review. In this episode, I'm going over my top 10 albums of 2009. We'll just rapid fire knock out a couple honorable mentions, albums from 2009 that are really great that could not make my top 10, unfortunately. First, we got a movie soundtrack, the Coraline soundtrack, one of my personal favorite movies with a really haunting soundtrack. I don't remember the name of the artists who made this one, but they really haven't done much besides this. They need to get out there because this is some really, really excellent stuff. Specifically, that first track, "Hazards of Love" by the Decemberists. The Decemberists. I want to get into this band. I've never gotten into them. I have heard a little bit from this album. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but not as familiar as I wish I was. It may be higher on the list, or it might actually make the top 10, if I had more time with this album, but unfortunately, I'm just not extremely familiar with it. But this is a band I would like to get into because this album sounds really great. Aim and Ignite by Fun, really great pop album. Not a lot to say besides that. I reviewed it on the channel. I might link the review. Hopefully I do if I don't forget. Lungs by Florence Plus the Machine, a really great album, really epic kind of alternative pop music. Just a great album. Brand New Eyes by Paramore, the debut. It's got some solid stuff on it. Not my favorite thing. Paramore's never been my favorite band, but it's a solid album. Wind's Poem by Mount Eerie is very hard to listen to, as some Mount Eerie tends to be, but it's a very unpleasant experience, but a very good, it's a very intentionally unpleasant experience listening to this album, but it's a good album, a great album even. And then In Shallow Seas We Sail by Emery. I think I would love this album if I was more into hardcore music or metal. I feel like I would just love this because I love aesthetically what's going on. It's just that it's hard for me to get behind this genre, and I feel like lyrically there's just a lot going on here. Like, it's very dense, but once again, it's just hard for me to kind of listen to metal. It's just not a genre I'm very familiar with, or hardcore music, and so I wish I liked this more than I did, but as it stands, I think it's a really great album that I wish I liked more. And without any further ado, let's hop in to this amazing top 10 albums list. At number 10, I have a fan favorite release from the band Arctic Monkeys. This one is called Humbug. If you like Arctic Monkeys, you know this one. It's got Crying Lightning on it. It's got actually a couple bangers on it. Just a really great album. Don't have too much to say about it. I'm not the biggest Arctic Monkeys fan. I'm just acknowledging that this is a great album and it deserves a spot on this list. On the other hand, I'm a massive Passion Pit fan, and somehow, just a little bit of Mac Music Review trivia, this is the only album by Passion Pit that made a top 10 on any of my lists, and it was the album that I ranked the lowest when I ranked all the Passion Pit albums. So, I don't know what that means. Somehow Gossamer didn't make it onto my 2012 or 2013 list, whatever year that one came out. But Manners, I think the album has grown on me since I did my Passion Pit albums ranked. And it's just really hard for me because I think it's a really amazing album, like a genuinely amazing album with some of the best Passion Pit songs ever. I need to do a top 10 Passion Pit songs video sometime in the future because there's so many amazing songs from this album. And it's a really, really great album. It's just number 9 on this list because there are 8 albums that I think are better. I am not really qualified to talk about the album Bit Orca by Dirty Projectors. I feel like I haven't listened to this album enough to really justify it on this album, to justify it above Manners and Humbug. But Bit Orca is seen by most people in music circles and blogs and critics, that it's the Dirty Projectors' magnum opus, that it's their best album. Either that or Swing Low Magellan. I'm leaning towards this one. Swing Low Magellan is a beautiful album. It's gorgeous. And I love this guy's voice. I love the dynamics of this band. I really, really just dig everything these guys have done, really. And it took me a long time to get into them, but I just realized that recently. But this album is really, really great. Really just kind of, once again, beautiful vocals, great music, very crisp sound. It's very nice. This one is the newest inclusion on this list. The album that I was the least familiar with. I listened to this in preparation for a best albums of 2009. I was looking for a list of, really great albums from 2009. The Long Fall Back to Earth by Jars of Clay is really incredible. I mean, it's Christian pop rock really doesn't get, or Christian alternative rock, or I guess Christian indie rock really doesn't sound much better than this. It's funny that I'm saying that because there's going to be another album that's almost in the same subgenre that is higher than this one that does sound better than this. But this is really great. I've never been a Jars of Clay fan. I've never really listened to them. This is a new experience for me. But the songwriting is really strong. Really, really strong emotions going on in these lyrics. Songs like Closer, songs like Lesson 1. A lot of emotion conveyed through the music too. It's a really cool album. About to hit you with Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix. That absolutely iconic, absolutely legendary album from Phoenix, and legitimately one of the most legendary indie and alternative albums of all time. Even though Phoenix, I think, as a band is kind of irrelevant at this point, I don't think this band is really matters. I don't think the band is very significant besides this one album. Like the song Listomania, and then 1901, like they're just absolutely legendary songs in the world of indie and alternative music, and it's indeed one of the most legendary albums of the decade, of the 2000s, that is. Even though it came out in 2009, it's a really iconic album, and it is really great, and a lot of the deep cuts are really good too, so don't be sleeping on this one. Relient K, another huge surprise, another one that I listened to I was vaguely familiar with it. It was an album from my past, middle school, man. I knew some of these songs. And listening to it again for this list and discovering that Forget and Not Slow Down is a really amazing album. I mean, really powerful, kind of the same things I would say for Jars of Clay. Really strong emotions, really strong nostalgia, and the album is nostalgic for me, but it feels like it's beyond that. The second the song comes on, it's there's something to it. There's something powerful in the music. There's something going on. Man, this album gets under your skin. It's a breakup album, and it's the best breakup album ever made? Maybe? Everything I just said about Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix can be said about this new album, but multiply that times 10 or 100. And that's Merriweather Post Pavilion by Animal Collective. Not an Animal Collective fan, I have to acknowledge this album. It's incredible. It is so, so good. I've never been into Animal Collective. But this is... My Girls is one of my favorite songs of all time. And the album is just so cool. Really cool, kind of psychedelic, indie, alternative rock music. And I shouldn't have to introduce this album. You should know it. It'd probably be a lot higher on a lot of other people's lists. I'm pretty sure this is many, many, many lists' number one album of 2009, but for me it's number 4. Yeah, my number 3 is the 21 Pilots self-titled album. It is a really great album. It is the best 21 Pilots album by a pretty sizable margin, even though the band is really unrecognizable on this album. This sounds almost nothing like the 21 Pilots you would know from any other decade or any other 21 Pilots album. It's almost a completely different band, but I think it's their best material. I think it's their best, songs. It's certainly the best album experience out of all their albums. Really amazing songwriting, really powerful, oftentimes very serious, not terribly fun, besides a couple moments like the Pantaloon and Johnny Boy. I just reviewed this album, so if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts, you can check out that video in the description. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Really amazing album. It's the best 21 Pilots album, in my opinion. My number 2, an album that I love very dearly. Very, very nostalgic. It is the artist that got me into music. It's the first artist I was ever a fan of, and that's Owl City, and it's the album Ocean Eyes. His big album, his really big album, the one with Fireflies on it, the one with Hello Seattle, the one with On the Wing, even though that was on Maybe I'm Dreaming. That's an older album. But this album, so good. I love this album. So many of Owl City's best songs ever. So many amazing songs on this one. Amazing tunes. Just blissful electronic, like dreamy electronic music. It's so nice, and it's just the songwriting works, and it's Umbrella Beach. It's just emotions. This album is just emotions for me, and in the best way possible. I reviewed this one also on the channel. I'll link that in the description. Nobody will see this coming, but my number one, my favorite album of 2009 is It's All Crazy, It's All False, It's All a Dream, It's All Right by Me Without You. An album that is very weird that I have it this high on the list because it is a folk album made by a post-hardcore Christian band. It's very weird. They have a really weird spot in music. Me Without You. It's an extremely well-respected band by anyone that knows their name. I feel like people, especially other artists, I've listened to podcasts where people are like, man, Me Without You that's like one of the greatest singers, songwriters, like amazing. And this album in the fan base is just in a weird place because it's their only album that like is going in a folk direction. And Me Without You is all about storytelling, but the storytelling is more front and center. They mix like storytelling and poetry. And this and 10 Stories are the most they've ever focused on storytelling. But I think the storytelling on this album is much more powerful and effective than it is on 10 Stories. Still a great album. This one's better. I love this album. I think the songs are just incredible. Amazing tunes, amazing music. Just unbelievably awesome. Almost every single song on this album is slept on. It's so underrated. I kind of had to put it at number one, even though I spent so much more time with the Owl City album. Like that one's much more meaningful to me, but this album needs the number one spot. One, because people need to hear it if anyone's ever going to listen to it. And then I also I think I genuinely would say it's a better album than Ocean Eyes, even though it's not as meaningful to me. It's incredible. Incredible. Yeah. And that's just about everything that I have for you guys today in this specific video. What are some of your favorite albums of 2009? Did I miss any? I feel like I was semi-knowledgeable about 2009. Not my most knowledgeable year, but I was like, I know some of these albums. I know some of these albums really well. I've had a lot of time. There's a lot of albums and bands on this list that I grew up with, like Passion Pit, 21 Pilots, Owl City. Like those are really essential artists for me. And those are albums that I'm very, very familiar with. But some of the other ones I'm a little bit less so. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoy. I hope you give me some recommendations from other great 2009 albums that I didn't mention on this list. And have a great rest of your day.